Mock trial. Exciting. Gentlemen, I do need you to, let's see, why don't we do one group of 4 and one group of 5, so that way either Garrett or Will, you can join that group, and then we just pull a table to add to another group. So you sit there next to Joe, okay? And then Will, you can join any of the teams that you'd like to pull up a chair to.
Come on over, Will.
Okay. Get up. Come on. Thank you. All right, guys, so what we're going to do today is we're going to be preparing for a mock trial. I think you will find it exciting. But before we do that, I just want to finish going over your student action project in case you had any questions about that yesterday. I know that we went over the requirements yesterday, but it was at the end of class. You can just take that chair. So here's what I'm going to give to you. If you have your permission slip from home, you can take that out and I'll come around and collect it. If you don't have it, I can just get it from you on Friday or later in the week. So at some point this week would be good, so that way you can get the numbers to the 2 organizations. They have an idea of how many people intend to come. So what I'm going to give to you now is just the sheet that goes over the requirements. Some of you asked, well, how am I graded? And so I can answer that question by going over this. There we go. I think you did. I'll come over and explain to you. Alright, so here we go. I need one person to help read. A nice volunteer, please. Someone going to read for us? Alright, thank you, Jake. Nice and loud.
You have studied the life of a Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, and his commitment to educating others about the perils of indifference. You have read how Goethe and Kurt Klein have worked to fight hunger in the United States and about the role we each play in helping those in need. Now that you have read about what other teams have done across the country to help fight injustice, think about what you would like to do.
We did this yesterday.
I know, that's the first part. So the second part, what you're going to do is the second part there goes over the 2 volunteering opportunities that we discussed yesterday, but the requirements are at the bottom, so that part we did not go over. So the sheet that you have in your packet from yesterday has the same description, but because it's to your parents, it doesn't have all the assignment requirements. So you're going to go over the bottom section there. So here are the ways that you are graded. So this is what you want to listen to. So here are the requirements. Select one of the volunteering options and research the organization. Don't worry about that. On Friday, Mrs. Weatherby is going to be with us for part of the period in the Writing Center, and we'll do that together. So that part you'll actually get accomplished on Friday. Number 2, participate in your chosen volunteering opportunity. So that's the part where you'll actually show up that day and you'll complete the task. The last one is complete a project reflection. And so what that means is that after you finished volunteering, you'll then do a half-page response about what you learned, was it what you expected, would you volunteer again, just basically your thoughts and ideas about that experience. So if you put a star next to that, that's the one thing that you have to do after you volunteer. And so you'll turn that in after the volunteering experience, and that's how you will get your points. At the top, you can write down 30 points because that's what it's worth. So if you're looking for a way to bump up 3rd quarter, this is the way to go about doing that. Questions about the assignment or about the sheet? Okay, all right, yes, go ahead.
How many points do you get there for getting going?
So you're not going to do the reflection?
No, I'm saying I'm asking how many points we get for going to the...
So you probably get half of it for showing up and the other half is for the reflection. Okay, go ahead, Annalisa. Yes, you may. You can take the pass. All right, any other questions before we put this away? Okay, all right, so put it away so you don't lose it or misplace it.
Yeah, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Melina.
How are we going to decide what one we're doing?
You get to choose. So basically, you can either go home and discuss it with your parents, or if there's one that you know you definitely want to do, you're just going to mark it on that permission slip and then give it to your parents. On the back, guys, can you listen up? On the back of the sheet that you got yesterday is a description of both the organizations, so that might help you make your choice.
So wait, we don't go as a class?
No, you're just going to go that day, but I'll be there and your classmates will be there. Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Sometimes with a group together.
I didn't hear you, Derek.
Sometimes with a group together.
You can choose to do that. So Patrick had a really good question. His question was, what if you and some of your friends in the class want to do the same one? You can definitely sign up together. That's fine, too. All right, any last questions before we get to our second part of today? Okay. Yes, go ahead. I will get you all of that 0 out. Any other questions? Okay, put this away. Try your best not to lose it. Okay, so for the second part, we're going to talk about our mock trial. So I'm going to go over with you. I have a quick PowerPoint just to go over the different rules. Can you get the lights for me, please? Thank you, Patrick. Okay, here we go. So at this point, all you need to do is to listen. So here's our trial. It's going to be the people, which would be the general public, versus Jack Meridew. I'm going to go over essentially what the charges are and what the different roles are for our trial. Now today we're just doing all the preliminary. So generating the questions, how are you going to build your case? If you're part of the prosecution, which means that you're trying to prove that Jack is guilty, what are some questions that you can ask him while he's on the witness stand that force him to acknowledge things that he's done that are going to be perceived as violent, or at least perceived as an indication that in his character there's something about him that isn't quite trustworthy or maybe desires power. If you're his defense team, you're going to try to think about questions you can ask him that are going to pose, or at least show him to be in the best light possible. You want to show that Jack is the kindest, sweetest kid on the island. He was just trying to help out. That's why, he became his own tribe leader, because he wanted to help the boys and get rid of their fear of the beast. And so you're going to try to take anything that he did that could be perceived as negative and spin it in a way that comes across as just him trying to help out the team. So let's go over the case. All right, so here's your setting. Upon returning to school in 1955, the surviving boys from William Golden's Lord of the Flies find their community in absolute uproar. And we talked a little bit about this, what would happen if they did go back home, how would people respond? Their parents, teachers, and religious leaders are demanding an explanation for this savage behavior on the island. Horrified over the seemingly senseless killing of Piggy and Simon, their families have filed a criminal complaint with the district magistrate, naming Jack as the party responsible for their son's untimely deaths. All right, so here's the charge. Jack Meridew is responsible for the deaths of Simon and Piggy and the psychological trauma experienced by their surviving boys while on the island. So depending on your team and which character you have that you're trying to either defend or implicate, that's going to shape the way that you try to either prove this or disprove it. All right, so here's the trial. It's a criminal trial. There'll be a sentencing and imprisonment. We're not going to go over that part today. We're just going to focus on how do you set up your case, how can you present your character in the best light. All right, here's the procedure. So both the prosecution, those are people that believe that Jack is guilty, and the defense, those are the people that believe Jack is innocent. They'll be represented by a team of 4 attorneys. So basically, within each of your groups of 4, 2 of you are going to be attorneys. Okay, some of you will be working on the questions that will be asked of Jack by his own team. They're going to try to paint him as someone who's very kind, generous, giving. Some of you will be looking at questions that are going to present him in the opposite light. Someone who was violent, manipulative, someone who craved power so much that he would do anything to achieve that. Okay, starting with the prosecution, each team will call first-hand witnesses. Those are going to be the characters in the book, and I'll show you which characters will work for each side. They'll speak to the facts of the events that occurred on the island as known to them. Now that's important. Once you start working in your teams, you're going to want to brainstorm first. So let's say that you have Roger, and Roger is going to be on the defense side. He's going to help to show that Jack was just a leader who wanted the best for the people he was in charge of. He never intended for any of this to happen. But you want to first figure out what events was Roger actually present for. So what questions could he answer about things that happened on the island? And if you have Ralph, you want to first think about what are some things that he was actually present for that you could then question him about. So brainstorming is going to be the first part. All right, so here are the witnesses. So for the prosecution, these are the people that are going to prove that Jack is guilty. You're going to have Ralph and Sam and Eric. So depending on your folder, if you happen to be for the prosecution, you might be asked to generate questions that would be asked of Ralph. So if you're questioning Ralph, you're going to want to ask Ralph questions that help to show that he did his best, that Jack somehow undermined his authority. Questions that are going to basically allow Ralph to explain what happened on the island, maybe indicate that part of the ending where they're all chasing him. So think about things you can ask Ralph that are going to help Ralph give answers that show, wow, Jack really is dangerous. Like, he obviously was involved in this crime. If you're the defense, okay, let's say that you have Jack as your character. You're going to try to find ways, as I said before, to show that he meant very well, that he was trying to help. If you have Roger, this is an interesting one. You could ask Roger questions that are going to actually show that Jack wasn't guilty. What could you ask Roger that would show that Jack wasn't guilty? Go ahead.
Did you commit the crimes?
All right, did you commit the crimes, right? And remember, he can't lie, so what is he going to have to say? Yes. Okay, therefore that's going to basically show that Jack did not kill Piggy. Okay, making sure we remember the book. And then for Sam and Eric, they count on both sides because remember, in the beginning of the book, they're kind of like with Ralph, and in the second part of the book, they're with Jack. So there are events from both sides that they can kind of testify to. So depending on how you're using their testimony, that's going to shape the questions that you ask them. Okay, questions so far? All right, I think we have 2 slides left.
Are we also doing like cross-examinations?
That's where we are right now. Okay, so there's going to be 2 types of questions, and your folder will tell you which ones you're responsible for. So some of you will be doing direct questioning. That means that you're basically questioning your witness. So if you're on Jack's team, what questions can you ask Jack to show that he was a benevolent leader, someone who was always looking out for the group? You might ask questions like, what was your role on the island, right? And so Jack would say, I was in charge of the hunters. Okay, so establishing background. If you're questioning Roger, direct question, you might say, okay, why did you throw those rocks at Henry? I was playing a game. So think about what you can say that's going to make him seem credible. Cross-examination. You want to destroy this character. So you want to show this person in the most negative light possible. So in this case, let's say that you were asked, let's say you were questioning Ralph. You might say, isn't it true that you were appointed leader of the group? Why might Jack's defense want Ralph to answer that question? What would that show? So if you're trying to show that Jack is innocent and you're cross-examining Ralph, why would you ask him, isn't it true that you were appointed leader of the group? Go ahead.
Who's in charge?
All right. So it shows that he was in charge. And then you can say, well, if you're the leader, then wouldn't you be the one responsible? So that way you want to build your case that way, by destroying Ralph's character. Now what about this one? However, isn't it true that you chose to give Jack a position of leadership? Did this happen? All right, what does that show then too? If you follow up with a question like that. All right, that he's guilty. It's like, wait a minute, but you have authority. You've given someone other roles and other responsibilities, so you really are in charge. Questions so far? Who feels like they got it? All right, excellent. So first thing you're going to do when you get your folder, you're going to have different rules. So someone's going to be the recorder, so pick someone that you want to do the writing. That means everyone has to help you, though. You can't just be like, okay, you go fill this out. 2 people are the attorneys. Okay, so they're going to help to build the case. 1 person is the character. And you're going to basically pose questions back and forth and make suggestions for things that are going to help build your case. Okay, but the first step should be brainstorming. What does your character know? And then use that to help you generate your questions. Questions about the questions? All right, so I'm going to come around with your folder. All right, guys. Let's see. Jack is guilty or Jack's defense?
Guilty.
All right. Sorry. Alright. Jack's defense. Okay, come on, you guys can do it.
Are we waiting? Hang on. So, we're going to use Ralph next to Jack. And we're going to cross-examine him. So what do you do? Oh no, wait, we're trying to prove that Jack is innocent by questioning Ralph.
I will.
Okay.
So wait, Jack's lawyers are going to ask Ralph questions that make Ralph brainstorm and create a list of events Jack has knowledge of and participated in.
Are we gonna have to present this? Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the point.
Well, I didn't know if we were like gonna do it like as a
Yeah.
class.
Wait, who are the two attorneys? And who are Ralph?
I'm a Ralph.
Yeah, because you're the only guy.
Alright, cool.
Alright, so,
Why are you
Wait, does that mean you're questioning me this whole
I'm
time?
recording.
I know why you feel like with all those.
Oh, I don't know your guys' names. Okay, I know yours is dissocial, I can't spell the rest of it. I don't know yours.
I know, that's in church.
It's right there. Right at the top of her paper.
And I don't know your
Let's do this together.
Alright, anyways.
Sorry.
So how do you want us to split this up again?
Okay, so we're gonna have to come up with a list of things that Jack has done.
Well, like she said, gave him power.
No, Jack. You're talking about
Wait,
what bad
what Jack
things
has
Jack
done,
Yeah,
and
how
then
can
spin
we
them.
blame? Yeah, how can we blame that on Jack?
Oh,
So just come up with like a list of things that Jack has done
Okay.
that are wrong.
He tried to murder Jack.
What?
We're talking
I,
about Jack.
I mean, I just said
He
the
tried
wrong
to
name.
kill Ralph.
Ralph, not Jack. He doesn't try to
Yeah,
kill
He
him.
set the order to.
Yeah, he sent the boys to kill Ralph. Wow, I suck at names.
But didn't we go with them though?
Yeah, remember they all went
But we
around the
can't say
island?
sent the boys to kill Jack.
He went.
How about like facilitate it? That's a big word.
Oh, look at those big words you're using.
I don't even know what I said. How about
He set the boys to kill Ralph and he went with them.
just say organize the killing of Ralph.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah, but my razor sucks.
I don't have one.
I have pen.
I
in
have a
hand.
pen.
Mary, just cross it out. Or do that.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're all good.
he killed Simon. And then he is responsible for Simon's death because he was the one who really organized it.
Anyone need help so far?
We're proving Jack is innocent.
Well, so Ralph, he's a witness for the prosecution, so that means that you're actually trying to show that Jack is guilty by asking Ralph questions. It's okay. It's
We're
okay.
writing bad things.
But no, these are just things that he was present for, so that's all right. Because regardless of how you generate the question, the event that he's there for still matters.
I wanted to spin it so he was innocent.
You wanted to spin it so he's innocent. Aww.
Disappointing.
But Ralph is a great character.
But Jack, I wanted him to be innocent.
You wanted Jack to be innocent. Interesting. Okay. All right.
I
Well,
could totally spin
I will
that.
say that if we're generating questions that are supposed to show that he's guilty, though, watch out. Make sure that you're not leaving openings where it could be interpreted that maybe he is innocent. So you've got to anticipate. What can you ask Ralph that's going to help to show that Jack was
I'm
the
against
ringleader, in control, all of those things.
That's why you're not a prosecutor.
I'm gonna sabotage this.
Right, and make sure you share the burden of getting all the notes out because it is a little long. Okay? All right, I'll be back.
I'm so sabotaging this. Jack's gonna be innocent.
He's not innocent.
Yes, he is.
He killed Simon.
No,
Wait,
he
we're
didn't
showing
kill
that he's
Simon.
like.
Everyone else.
Kind
Yeah,
of
he's
overthrew Jack.
Because he was Jack and Piggy. I mean, Ralph and Piggy.
Just writing down things that Jack was present for and that
Oh,
he did
then
wrong.
just say the pig's head on the stick or whatever.
Stealing of Piggy's glasses and fire.
Why don't we talk about the pig though?
Yeah, I'm gonna write that.
Well, it is.
Pig's head on the stick,
Yeah.
where it's like sharpened at both ends.
Yeah.
That was also Roger though. Like
I know, but
Roger's
he's-
more to blame.
It's just where he was
present
present.
for it,
Not
so.
that's for him. What do you have so far, Hassan?
Organize the killing of Ralph, responsible for Simon's death, overthrew Jack, stealing of spectacles, put Pig's head on the stick.
He moved the whole.
Didn't he help the fire, like do the fire?
That's the killing of when there's a huge fire on the island, they're all trying to get him, and that's how they.
Well, yeah, but it was
Well,
Fire. Just write like he does whatever he has to do to get power.
yeah.
Because that would help with the question. Because
Power greedy.
power thirsty.
He kind of turns the boys into savages because like he used to face bones.
Went against the row.
Did you say you wanted to kill the beast? Why not? Oh no.
Because you know when they were voting.
Throw it in a bad way.
Wait, so time to shine.
No, but like he said, like he wanted to kill the beast. So put that in like an aggressive way and make it sound like I'm a murderer.
But wouldn't it be like when Ralph and Jack, they were all voting for who was like leader, and like Ralph won the vote, but then he said that like he kind of threatened the little like ones that if they voted for if they voted for Ralph, then like it wouldn't be fun on the island, and they would just have to do work.
Yeah.
Just like do the vote or something. And then what part?
So his priorities aren't straight. Let's just put it
Yeah. What part were you talking about again?
Killing the beast.
Oh yeah.
Want to look into like scared?
It means like I'll kill it.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And then, but like it was because it has to do with Simon's death because of the killing.
so just put that down.
You can.
It's so tricky.
Alright, so how are we doing here? Is everybody contributing?
Yeah, we are.
So is that like a prop for your defense?
Yeah, these are
My
his
cuffs.
handcuffs.
Oh, okay.
Other
So
hands.
we are really taking this very seriously.
Yeah, we are.
Now I thought, so this really hasn't been a fair trial then, if you already have him.
Ms.
Isn't
McFarland,
it
you can't lie.
This is just so
guilty?
he. This is just so he can
Not killing any more people.
not resist.
Ms.
Okay.
McFarland, he can't lie, right?
No, he cannot
So you can just be
lie.
like, were you in on the killing of them? And he can say yes.
Okay, so that's true. That could be one of your questions. But what else can you ask him that's going to
Was it true that you were there the night
cause
of the
him to
dance?
come across as someone who this has been a pattern of behavior?
That's the
That's
killing
the
of
killing
Simon.
of Simon.
Yeah, but what can you do with that? So if you're trying to prove that Jack is guilty, and Domenica says, all right, so yes, he was at the dance, but I think her question is, why does that make him any more or less guilty than
They
anybody
were all
else?
there.
Because they were
It's
all
not gonna
there.
happen.
But how can you phrase it that maybe it makes him seem
Are you the one
more
that
guilty?
said to do the dance?
Or did you leave
There
the
you
dance?
go. See, so that's how you can take that event and focus it in a way that it basically shows that he's the one who made some decisions, right? Well, try. All right, so what questions do you have?
I thought it was to be like, were you involved in the killing of Simon?
Okay, so did we write that one down?
Peggy?
Okay, so let's write down that one too, and then we can anticipate how this
We already
how
had
he'd
them
respond.
down.
Okay, all right. Did you guys do the brainstorming part first?
We kind of just brainstormed,
Out
talking to
loud?
each other.
Okay, all right, that's good. But you want to go through each of the major events. So far you've covered the dance. What are some other events that he's present for that you could ask about?
When they were voting.
Okay, all right, so write that down. So when they were voting. And then I would say come back to it and write a question about the voting. So Patrick, what could you prove about
Oh
the
yeah,
voting part?
the
That I
identity thing.
forced the kids to come with me.
What was the
Lie
part
to
when he
them.
Okay.
hid his
All
identity?
right.
When he put the face mask on? But,
So you could use
but
the
what
face
part?
mask.
Wait, where did he even get the paint? I don't remember.
It's like clay and mud that he gets, like basically he
It's
uses
not
water.
actual.
Yeah. Alright, but Patrick brought up a good point. So here's the thing. What I would say is you guys have got to write this down because you're all suggesting good ideas, but you're coming back to it. So Annalisa brought up the face paint. Patrick brought up the idea.
Yeah, but we needed more food more than.
Why did they though?
We wouldn't have survived if we
Why did
didn't.
they not tend it? Because of the beast?
Because they were hunting. They were hunting.
Alright, so it'll be like, we had to hunt.
We didn't have food left, and we needed it for
What
survival.
we should start saying now We should try to start pointing Piggy's death at. We have to point. Hang on. We have to point Piggy's death at Roger. So.
No, but Roger's trying to defend.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're blaming him, we're not gonna have you take the blame for the death
Think of it.
You didn't
Think
do
of
it.
it. We're trying to defend you. We'll do whatever we can do to defend you.
So what we're gonna ask you is we're gonna be, where were you when Roger was killed? And you're gonna say you were there, like you were.
I was.
And then we can ask what happened.
No, because you didn't push the rock.
I didn't tell him.
Exactly. But
Margaret, I'm gonna come back in just a second.
But he saw what happened, so we can say.
I was only a witness.
So what
of
happened?
Yeah, but let me think. Back at that scene, wasn't it like they were on the hill? That's where all the kids were. Roger was up on the hill.
Roger pushed the rock.
Jack was down here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack was down.
Where
trying
To get Piggy. Because, like, hang on. So, like, we have the mountain here. There's, like, that little, wherever. Piggy's here, Ralph's there, and isn't Jack there?
Yeah,
He's
Jack
behind
was
them.
coming
Yeah,
back.
because he was coming back from hunting.
Yeah,
Wait,
so-
wasn't Ralph here?
Whatever. Shut up.
Wait,
No,
stop.
Piggy,
Piggy was
stop.
in front of Ralph.
Stop.
Ralph is an inch to the
No, stop. Okay. So, if Jack's down here, he has absolutely no responsibility for what happened at Peggy.
Exactly.
I was at the
Yeah,
So we're gonna ask you. We're gonna say, where were you when Piggy was killed? And you're gonna
I'm
say,
not sure that's right, that I was at the bottom.
you were at the bottom.
You were.
You
I was
had-
say
you
I was
didn't
at the
tell him
bottom
to do
of
it.
Castle Rock, like that.
I was at the bottom of Castle Rock, and then we're gonna ask you, where did the rock come from? And you're gonna say, from the top of Castle Rock.
From the top of Castle Rock, and
And
we're
then-
gonna say how did it come from there? And then he'll
It
be
was
like,
pushed, and then you can be like by who?
and
Just
he'll
point
just
to
be
that
like,
person.
No, we're not gonna do the point. We don't do the
and
point.
yeah, he only did the point once.
It was what's Roger's last name?
Maybe.
Roger that, okay?
Roger that.
We're gonna call him Roger that.
It was Roger that.
And forget.
Write this stuff down.
What about Simon?
Yeah, I don't
Jack's
even remember
not
Simon's
Everybody's
story.
responsible for that.
Yeah, Jack's not.
You could say that Jack wasn't even responsible.
We
for
could
that.
say
You
that
could
Jack never
Ralph
said
was.
the boys went crazy and it wasn't Jack's fault.
It
He
was
couldn't
because
control
You
them.
could say Ralph was kind of responsible for Simon's death too.
Right, anybody need any help? Get all these good ideas down. Oh, okay, all right, okay. all right.
Hey,
This is good
confidential.
information. This is good
This is a court
information.
document.
Oh, a
court
court
document.
document. Can I see this?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
There's a court sealed
It's
document.
court sealed.
You could be
Well,
a red
well, I'm an official of the court, so I think
unsealed
I have some privilege.
It's
So don't forget that
Unsealed.
even though I know you're taking notes here, these are
Yeah,
going to help
we will.
you think about what you hope his answers will show. So I know that you're kind of prepping Christian right now, but what do you want his different answers to show about him? Okay, so just keep that secondary part in mind. All right, you got it?
Go on the Castle Rock.
Okay, what's your best question?
State your name.
All right,
her
so,
first
question.
so
Were you
identification.
the leader of the island?
All right, so why is that a good question?
Because you could say that I wasn't really responsible.
If he wasn't the leader, he's not responsible.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have a point to Ralph.
Yeah, he's gonna be
I
like,
need to know who Ralph is.
Wow, very
We'll have him
dramatic.
take his sunglasses off.
Very dramatic moment in the court. Okay, okay. But remember, you don't want to damage his credibility by making him over the top.
Oh,
So
yeah,
he's got to
yeah,
be someone who's really trying to just clear his name.
He's gonna manufacture the tears too.
I think if the questions are good, you will elicit the response that you need. You won't need the tears or the sunglasses.
are we doing
okay?
it today or are we just?
It'll be after break. So today you're doing all the prep work.
Just
Okay?
get one tear come down.
I'm going to make him.
I'll come up like behind you.
Okay.
So
All right.
I have a way with words.
That's good to know. Let's get back on track. So what else can we ask him?
We're gonna talk to him now about
Okay.
about Piggy's death. We're gonna say because he was down on the bottom of Castle Rock. So if the rock came from the top, how is he responsible for that death?
Okay. All
Yep.
right.
And if Ralph says he was still the leader of the island, so it's not like
Yeah, at the end of the book, he's still saying
yeah.
this.
Okay. All right. So those are questions that you want to write down, and also what you hope they'll show. You also want to anticipate what's the prosecution going to
Oh,
ask.
trust me, we've already been questioning him.
Okay. All
So
right.
we're on top of this.
But you want to have it all written down so that way it's all planned out ahead of time. Okay?
I've gone to law school.
That's good to
I've
know.
passed the bar.
I'll check back in a few minutes. Yes.
Yale.
Yes, may take your pass.
I went to Yale.
All right,
I went to
gentlemen, how are we doing
Princeton.
here?
I went to
Any
Harvard.
good questions? What's your best
Okay, now you guys can stop talking. We have to get going.
So we have it all planned out. We just have to write.
That's a flawed statement.
Wait, what?
Saying that Jack was at all the killings, well, so was Ralph. He was there when Piggy died. And he was also there when... No, you can go.
No, it's okay.
He was also there when Simon died, and he helped kill Simon.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, we can't ask this because we're trying to ask Ralph a question about like him, and he has to turn it over to like Jack and prove it that was his wrong, that he was wrong. But how are we supposed to like? How are we supposed to ask him about Jack? Jack was present. It's something that we asked Jack. Were you present?
Did you see if he? That's putting
But I feel like this isn't a really strong question at all. It's just
It's not. I just proved it wrong. But it was a flawed question.
I mean, Ralph was present at all of them too.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but he wasn't on the. Then ask the question a different way. Say, weren't you present at the killings? Where you saw Jack had power over.
Does someone have a good eraser because this one's really bad.
No. If this is any better than yours, I don't think it will be though. Even in the middle.
I'm sorry.
Alright. So we have one question that we didn't even make.
I can't believe we have. Okay. So,
Isn't it true that you were present at all the killings?
but we're not trying to bring
No,
Ralph.
but you said you wanted to spin it. You can ask yes or no questions, so you can do that and you can say yes.
But how is that going to bring us
Here,
any further?
how about you write a question and I'll think of a way to spin it towards my favor of proving him wrong. So just think of a question and then I'll spin it.
Like,
I'm good at that.
what Lauren's trying to say is like, you have to like not every like question's gonna have like a big explanation. Like you ask a question, and some of them are gonna be like, yes.
I never said, I wasn't talking about the answer though. I was just saying that the question isn't good because
But you could like spin off the question. So you can like ask a question and he says yes, and then you can say okay yes, and then you can ask another question about why you said yes. Leading up to it. I mean,
But
questions are stronger.
Alright,
it
so
wasn't about the question. It wasn't about that though. It was just
what type of question do you want to ask? Let's
Yeah,
start
you
with that.
ask the question.
That way we can get a ground.
we have to ask a question.
Alright, how are we doing over here?
Not
So you don't really understand how, like, what kind of questions.
Okay, so you are doing Ralph is a witness for the prosecution, and so you're trying to help him damage Jack's defense. So you want Ralph to say things that are going to imply that Jack was the one who was in charge, that Jack either took power, or at least there were moments when he showed that he was willing to do anything for power, that he's prone to violence. So Ralph is a good character because remember, he can actually speak to, what events did you write? So Ralph can actually talk about, let's see, how did Jack manipulate the boys? You can ask Ralph a question that would then allow him to provide examples of things Jack did to try to undermine his power. And then that would kind of show like, oh, so we have a character who was manipulated by personal gain. You have one about let the fire go out. You could ask Ralph what happened to the signal fire. And that's going to allow him to tell the story of how Jack did what. So what was Jack's role in the signal fire go out? So what would Ralph actually answer to the question? Okay, but what was hunting? That's right. And so what does that show about Jack?
He didn't want to get rescued.
All right, hold on. Okay, he doesn't care. What else?
He didn't want to get rescued.
He doesn't want to get rescued. What else? He was irresponsible. So that's exactly the type of things you want to ask Ralph. They're going to cast Jack in a way that shows he wasn't a leader who was focused on helping people. He was a leader who was focused on himself. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to do another one, or you think you kind of get the hang of it?
We got it, yeah.
But see, you did the hard part. So just use these things that you've already listed to help you then generate the questions. So we did this one together just now with the fire. We talked about fear. So then just go through. So face paint. What could you ask Ralph that would allow him to talk about how Jack used the face paint? What could you ask Ralph about power on the island? What could you ask him about the pig's head? That's a really good one to talk about. Or stealing. or his responsibilities. So you already did the hard part. He's going to take those events and shape them into questions. Okay? All right, so I'll come back.
He's done. For the one where wasn't
What was the question?
Fire.
Oh,
It was why did the
Oh, no,
why
we should
did
talk
you
about
let
the manipulation, and then we should talk about the fire. Okay.
For-
We can go off the beast because he's just going to answer.
So, do you think Jack did you see Jack manipulate the boys?
Or
and
how?
So, yeah.
Or how did...
Well, she asked 2 questions in one. So, did you see Jack manipulate the boys? If so, how?
Well, what do you mean see him manipulate? Like, I don't think you've asked that. 'Cause there's no
I
really...
feel like you're not asking. I feel like there's a different way to say it. But
Yeah.
How did Jack manipulate? Let's just get... We only have... We haven't even done the first question. And then we can go back after.
I have a good answer to that one.
Yes, answer.
He exploited the fear of the beastie to gain their support because he said he could protect them.
But then he also manipulates them to that they want food. He's like, well, I gave you food. What's Ralph giving you? Like nothing. So.
Well, they have the fruit tree, so they don't need a hunt.
Then that makes Ralph look bad because he didn't go hunting and get him.
That's true.
So you do want him to be innocent. I win.
So he exploited the fear of the beast.
To gain their support for making his own group.
Support because
His own personal gain of being.
he offered protection, and he would.
He offered protection which allowed his own personal gain of becoming leader. There, see, we got a solid answer now. Now we just have 5 more.
5 more, yeah. To be like, with that power he received, something.
We can do all of these questions.
Yeah, we can. They don't. All of our questions don't have to be on.
Oh, yeah?
No. We can just have random questions. So, where were you on the island when Piglet was killed?
That goes in the next box?
No. This is a question to him.
Oh, okay.
Yo, so it goes down there.
No, just don't write anything right now. I'm just asking.
Bottom of Castle Rock.
So, and where did the rock come from?
The top of Castle Rock.
So you were at the bottom and the rock came from the top.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
How?
Because it was pushed.
It was pushed by who?
Dare who?
Okay, so after you say Roger, I'm gonna Roger that. Kicks and fingers.
So,
Alright, so what you're gonna put in this is we're trying to prove that he was not
responsible.
He was not the head leader of the island.
Okay, so.
So just put he was not leading the entire island.
Not leading.
Okay, so we're gonna just go from the top there when Peter's right. State your name.
Jack.
Were you a kid on the island?
Yes.
What was your position in the island?
I was leader of the hunters.
So you weren't leading the entire island?
No.
Is the leader of the entire island in this courtroom? Point to him.
Patrick over there.
The records show that the client pointed at Ralph. Where on the island were you when Piglet was killed?
At Castle Rock.
Bottom of Castle Rock. And where did the rock come from?
Top.
So you were at the bottom and the rock came from the top. How? Pushed by who? Ralph? Roger. Roger that. Okay. So he was not leading the entire island. Good. Next question.
For the boulder.
He kind of like set them. He planned the boulder being like, and when Roger knocked it right. And he kind of like set the scene for it too.
Okay.
So like he didn't.
He gathered everyone.
Physically kill him, but he set the scene for it to happen.
Okay, so what kind of a question can you ask him that allows him to show that he was part of it?
Did you plan Did you have any pardon for Peggy's death?
Okay. All right. Now he's gonna probably answer
No.
no. So how can we ask that question another way to at least show that he was present? Maybe.
Were
Were you
you?
there at the death of Piggy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you witness
Piggy dying.
Piggy's death?
Okay. All right. Now, does anyone remember what happens right afterwards? How does he behave right after Piggy's
I
killed?
tried to kill Ralph.
I hear you.
I tried to kill Ralph,
All
right?
right. You could also ask him about that. So you could say, well, what happened after
Can you
Piggy's
be
death?
like, were you angry after Piggy's death or something and wanted to, which led to the planning of Ralph's?
Ooh, so that's definitely a leading question. So make sure you use use Patrick as like your bounce off, because he might say, well, do you want to actually incriminate yourself? So he says, yes, that was the reason that I started thinking about killing
Can I
Ralph.
plead guilty?
That's going to basically imply that he's guilty. So he might
You are.
answer no to that. But what could you ask him about the events afterwards that he has to say yes to? So this is a tough one.
There's no, it's only yes or no questions?
No, we're just trying to come up with a situation to kind of get him to indicate
After who
that
says Piggy?
he was part of Piggy's death. Well, do any of you remember what he says to Ralph after Piggy's killed?
You're next.
Something just like that. He says, I meant that. So you could then ask the question, guys, you with me?
Wait, who was the one that
You
laid
could
flat?
then ask the question, what did you say
Ralph laid
after
flat.
Piggy was killed? And just like Patrick answered, that he would be next. And so that way he can't lie on the stand, but you're forcing him to admit,
What if
to at
someone
least use
does
his own
that?
words. Well,
What if
I'm
we
there
say-
to know, since we all know
It's
the
like
law,
fun. What
right?
if we
I
ask
know,
him?
but like how? No, like in real life, like if someone ever, how would you know someone's lying?
Well, the one thing that can be held in is contempt of court.
And
And so there's
sometimes
usually some type of like a penalty for that. It could be time in jail. It could be like
How would you
actual
know if
fees.
that's a lie or if it's a lie?
It really comes down to the evidence.
I think Jack gets
that's-
life in prison.
You think Jack should get life in prison?
I already
Okay.
determined
I
it.
would just plead insanity.
That's the one thing that with all of this evidence about like his head especially, you could probably go with like the insanity plea. But let's not worry about that just yet, because
Well, I'm pleading
we're
guilty.
gonna have so much evidence. It's
Oh, can
obvious
we
that he knew what he was doing.
Right before anything, I plead
Even
guilty.
though him being guilty, can we ask why he didn't step up at the end when the naval officer
I think that's
asked?
an excellent question.
what-
Easy
who
100
was
Miss
in
Next One. He's
charge?
pleading guilty before anything.
I think that's a good question, Annalise. So did you guys all hear Annalise's question? So the idea of asking him about
Yeah, I don't think you should incorporate the hunters as a whole, because then you can't give examples of Jack individual, because you're grouping them.
But Jack, it's fine.
So,
we have about
Signifier going.
3 minutes left. So
so
go through your chart. If you're still missing any
I think it should be yes, we had a chance to escape the island.
Like keeping a signal fire going. Or sorry, I'm sorry. Did I just speak off?
Just keep going, because
Okay, because
you don't listen anyways.
I do listen, but you guys expect me to listen and
But
write at
like-
the same time.
He was saying that not to group the hunters together, but in this answer we're grouping them together.
Because then you can't.
But I didn't even
trying to
talk.
say.
I didn't even talk about them yet. I didn't write anything about them. Guys, really?
All right. So what's the situation? What's our update?
So we're just writing the answer.
Okay. So how are you doing that? Were you able to go through some more of the different events? Okay. Do you need any help?
No,
No, you're okay.
it's just getting it down.
All right, so you have, because the bell's gonna ring soon, literally 2 minutes. So what I would do is maybe do bullet points and try to get at least 2 more questions down.
In 2
You'll
minutes.
have more time after break to kind of come back and add.
Could we work on this like on our own? And, like,
If you wanted to as a team, you can work on it on your own. That's fine too. So let's just do bullet points. I'm going to collect everything and I'll keep it for us for after break. So if there's anything else that you really want to get on the sheet, try to just get it down because you might not remember after a week's vacation. Okay? All right. Okay, guys, we have just about 1 minute left. So do some
We didn't have to
bullet
write that
points,
much.
anything that you want to remember, that nobody wants to
It does. It just looks like a lot of